On to our final panel conversation. I would like to call to the stage Rob Jetten, our Minister for Climate and Energy Policy, Maaike Zwart, City Council Member of Delft, and Tim van der Hagen, Rector Magnificus. Asseyez-vous. Also need to do the catering here.
You're doing wonderful.
So welcome.
What's left to say after this
What's
speech?
left to say, yeah.
Wonderful, it was great.
Terrible, a good speaker like Frans Timmermans.
Yes.
You're completely
Just
overwhelmed and just, yeah. Rob, let's start with you. I had the privilege of speaking on the D66 Congress the other day, and you or your party, and maybe also the cabinet in a way, has presented itself as bringing bad news and being firm on what we need to do. A lot of Dutch people feel like they need to do all kinds of stuff. How are you going to win the minds and hearts of Dutch people when that is the message? Shouldn't it be a bit more positive?
Yeah, I think it should be positive, and it is actually positive. I think we have two groups more on the extremes in the Netherlands. One group is blocking a highway in The Hague every now and then, claiming that there is no climate policy at all and the Netherlands is not moving fast enough. Another group is 24/7 on Twitter, claiming that we're doing way too much, we're out of our heads, and we're not taking into account how to connect with society in climate policies. But we know for a fact that over 70% of the Dutch population feels climate change as one of the biggest threats for our wealth, and feels that we all need to do a better effort to tackle climate change and do it in a just transition, like Frans just said. So I think our policies should be, on one hand, focused on supporting and helping the broad majority of people and companies in the Netherlands that want to move forward, and sometimes just wonder, okay, what do I need to do? And how can government support me? Sometimes with subsidies, sometimes with clear policies, sometimes with just eyes on the prize, as the Commissioner just said. But we also have to engage with those that feel uncomfortable with climate policy. So I spend a lot of my time just discussing with people that are against new energy projects nearby their homes, or visiting people in poor neighborhoods in the Netherlands that see all these people talking about climate change, but they are just panicking about their energy bills.
Yeah.
So I think our main task for now, and that this is something also for local governments, is how can we deliver to those people that feel left behind in a very short term. Yeah. And we do need big speeches to get people along, but we also need a practical approach and concrete solutions for people that feel that policies were not there for them.
Yeah. Maaike, that's where you come in, the local policies here in Delft. Is Delft a city where people are on board with climate policies? You should say yes, probably, because you have so many students. But there's also, of course, another Delft who might be more doubtful.
Well, to be honest, the general view and the general conversations we have in the city are very positive. So mainly two questions are asked. When do you start? Are we in time? Like the planning questions, and what will it cost me? And I think those two questions are very valid questions, because the planning issue, and also Frans Timmermans already mentioned it, is real. Like, we have quite some work to do. The challenge is really big. We need to renovate, for example, half of our city. So those are major challenges, which cost a lot of money, which cost a lot of materials, which cost a lot of, or we need a lot of people actually to do those renovations. So I think those are valid questions. And the second one, who's going to pay for this, is also very valid. 20% of the households here in Delft can't afford their energy bill. They can't afford investments in their houses. So that they ask the questions, hey, who's going to help me with this, is very valid in my opinion.
Yeah. Tim, how do you feel the connection between the university and climate policies is? I mean, do you feel science is heard enough in The Hague, but maybe also at the local level?
It's never enough.
Of course it is.
That's a difficult question. We have politicians visiting us on a daily basis, almost every day. So we have lots of opportunities to share our new ideas and breakthroughs and so on. But on the other hand, I sometimes have the feeling that there is a knowledge gap between the two institutions, let's say The Hague and the Delft campus. Yeah. And thereby it is difficult for politicians and those working in The Hague to ask the right questions and to accommodate the answers that we provide. So I think we need more knowledge, deep knowledge in The Hague, if I may say so. And perhaps it's something
more
for our
scientists.
engineers to move in that direction. Could be.
So actually, some of these young students, they need to go into politics.
For instance, would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Great
Work at my
local
ministry.
parties to
The
start.
local party.
Sorry, you were?
We have great local parties to start. We
Ah,
have
okay, yeah, of
actually-
course, yeah. This is one big recruitment event.
Yeah.
You're already pitching
I
the
still have a lot of
government.
vacancies, but I actually fully agree because last year we actually hired some behavioral scientists to help us make better policies because we have, I think, approximately 2/3 of all the technologies to get to a climate neutral society are already there. So we can hire a lot of technical people and we will do that, but we also need people that understand how to help in the transitional phase and people that understand how behavioral science and how behavioral change works. So it was actually the first time in, I think, a decade that my ministry hired people that know anything about behavioral change.
So
We are now working on a national plan for the energy system. I will present that in 3 weeks' time. And we actually ask a lot of technical people, also from your university, but from all around the country, to actually make a policy framework that actually has some content. Because I think that is one of the big issues in The Hague for the past 2 decades, that we hired a lot of people that know a lot about legislation and a lot of lawyers and a lot of people that know everything about aanbesteden, but not a lot of people that really understand how the energy system works. So if you want to make a plan for the next 20 years, just make sure that people that actually understand the system write it. So I think that is the role my ministry has to play.
We have many examples of miscommunication. Talking about the nitrogen issue. If you don't know what it is, and that the air is mainly composed of nitrogen or hydrogen, that is just an energy carrier. It's not a source, and so on.
But
so
these
you
basics
really
you
need
still need to explain to politicians in The Hague.
sometimes not to Rob, of course.
But
But these are just the examples, and of course you need much more knowledge to really be in contact and to help each other.
Yeah, and what I think is really positive, like of course we also have a lot of interaction between the local government here and the university, but we not only talk, but we start to act. So we, for example, have the geothermal source in which we want to heat up 15,000 houses with that warmth. And I'm so glad that there we actually work together. So for you, it's a research project, and it's giving you heat for the buildings.
Campus, yeah.
And for us, it's heating up a serious amount of our houses. So there we learn together, but we also act together. And I think there is where the focus should be: acting, not only talking about it.
I fully agree. And well, I've been here quite a while. So I've worked in the energy transition for 35 years now. And still, we have not accomplished that much, if I have to be honest. So I agree with those that asked the questions. We have to accelerate, we have to speed up. And the best way to do that is to cooperate, those 3 parties, but especially the private sector, from startups to the corporates. And it needs some guts. We cannot allow ourselves to test and train everything and to develop the full regulation and so on before we develop and use certain new systems. Here in Delft, we have the Green Village, as you know very well. We have the DC grid, we use hydrogen, you have autonomous vehicles and so on. We have housing that is energy neutral. And we could easily make field labs out of certain parts of cities. Why not convert Delft into a field lab? Where we try and test things. 80% will go right, and other things, well, they simply don't fit. But then we move on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wait forever. So.
It's a cool idea, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the positive thing
Explain that to the
Rotterdam
Delftenaren.
field lab.
is that we already do that, Tim. So in the Innovation District, we cooperate together, and one of the main goals is that this will be the first circular area of the Netherlands. So I think there also, it's a great example where we actually act, and that's like 1/3 of our city where we, again, cooperate in actually doing it. So I fully agree that we already do it.
We can go. We can,
We can
Bigger
go.
and faster.
The image I got from this day, and I already had that image earlier, is that big companies really want to move forward. They seem to be committed. Of course, here and there, people bash Mr. Van Beurden and say that...
He's used to that, so...
He's used to that, and he knows how to deal with it. But you do get the feeling that bigger companies and governments are really serious, but that the biggest threat is now public opinion. That actually bigger companies want to go faster than a part of the public opinion. So how do you solve that? I mean, we're all agreeing probably in this room.
I really don't recognize that, to be honest. In the city of Delft, I really don't recognize that there is...
That might be a little bubble.
Well, we are a city of 100,000 people, and we are quite divided. So, of course, we have the university with all, well, maybe halves, but then still a lot of students are not really the richest people here in the room, I would say. But we also have Delft West, which is also now part of a national program, actually for poor areas in the Netherlands, like Rotterdam South. And there we actually started our first area to get the whole neighborhood off gas. And we speak to everyone in that neighborhood. So we go door to door to door. And there is no resistance. It's these two questions that are asked. So I think, to be honest, we're beyond that point. Generally, of course, Twitter. That's a whole universe in itself. But
Yeah, okay, but there's a real world behind it. I mean, I'm from.
It's very small.
No, it's not small. It's big. I'm from Twente. I can't even walk safe on the street if I say the things people say on this stage.
Well, let's
it's
say
really
in Delft, I really don't recognize that there is such a resistance.
But there are still, I think there are a lot of places in the Netherlands where it's almost impossible for local government to even get at the front door of people to engage about this transition from natural gas to public heating or whatsoever, because people don't trust government anymore, and it takes a while and it takes a lot of efforts to really re-engage with some parts of society. So luckily it's going well in Delft. I live in a small village near Nijmegen, also going fine, but if you go to parts of Amsterdam, Rotterdam and Groningen, it's a huge task for local governments. But coming back to your question, I think let's be happy that big companies are finally moving, because they haven't done a lot over the past few decades. Yes, they've done something with the pressure of the European carbon prices that finally are hitting 100 euros. But the electricity sector, the big industries, agriculture is still mainly responsible for lots of the pollution that's going on. And a lot of people feel a threat from getting a different heating system. A lot of people feel threat by reading the newspaper that states your gehaktbal will be a bit more expensive. And people look at big companies and they have to move first before you can ask me to do something in my own household.
And that's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to politicians, up to governments to really set ambitious goals for the upcoming 10 years, because we only have 10 to 15 years to keep 1.5 degrees alive. But there's also something that is completely different, I think, in Dutch companies in just a few years' time. And that is just simply competitiveness. So last year was a wake-up call with a price peak in natural gas prices, but the commissioner just talked about CBAM. Like, okay, we're going to protect Europe against products from outside Europe with a carbon price. That is not going to be the main challenge for the upcoming 10 years, because countries like India, Australia, Brazil are going to produce green hydrogen for a price that we can never produce green hydrogen in the Netherlands. Exactly. So steel factories will move to other parts of the world because it's cheaper to produce steel somewhere else than in Europe. So we really have to rethink what the economy of Europe will look like in 10 and 15 years, create policies to make sure that there's still any business going on in Europe, and make sure that young people are educated for the jobs that we will have in Europe, become more innovative, and make sure that we build this new circular economy to keep local welfare going. So I think that is a big change in mindset at companies that is necessary and needed to tackle climate change.
Absolutely. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
So the world will be flat energy-wise again. So Dutch autonomy or European autonomy is the question if we will ever reach that. Hydrogen or other molecules will produce there where the energy price is low. And that's probably not in the Netherlands.
No.
So it will be shipped all over the globe, like now oil is being transported all over the globe.
Yeah.
Or the industry will move to places where energy is cheap.
Yeah.
That's what
So
we see
Tim, now
happening.
you said that you lack scientists in The Hague. So actually all the young people listening today, they should start working for the government because everybody's trying to convince them to work for super cool startups instead of Shell. But they should work for Mr. Jetten.
Also.
And you, of course. Yeah, sorry, Maaike. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we try and train them more and more as engineers in social context.
Yeah.
So that they know their way in society and they know how to behave internationally and so on. They know about social sciences, humanities and medicine and so on. That is the new engineer that we try to educate.
Yeah. Because
And probably they are welcome in The Hague.
And are you doing enough? Because that's an issue with, in many fields, think about social media, for example, that people in tech, scientists, think that technology is neutral. They're beta, you know. I don't care about society, I'm just making stuff.
No. I hope, and I think we have left that a few decades ago already.
Yeah.
We have people who are truly conscious about society and about the well-being of mankind.
Yeah.
We work more and more together with Erasmus University and Erasmus Medical Center.
Yeah.
And in fact, we are thinking of building a new campus in Rotterdam, where we broaden our profile. More transition-oriented, like the energy transition or climate change adaptation. We didn't talk about it yet, but climate has already changed.
Yeah.
So we have to adapt ourselves to that. Health and tech, fintech, and all those new disciplines that will emerge.
Yeah. Well,
We will still keep on teaching then mechanical engineering and civil engineering and so on.
Of course. Now that you're bringing it up, climate adaptation, that used to be a topic which actually gave the impression that you don't want to do anything about climate change, just adapt, but now it's there, so we need to do something with it. What are we doing with it?
I think it was just 2 months ago that the Secretary General of the United Nations addressed the Security Council about climate change and the risks for not doing enough on climate adaptation. And he named 5 countries in the world that are most vulnerable for climate change, and the Netherlands was in that top 5. So we really have to take into account that even if we can keep global warming at 1.5 degrees, it's going to be a huge challenge for the Netherlands. And not only the rising of the sea levels, but also just more extreme weather conditions, more periods with extreme rainfall, periods with extreme drought that will affect agriculture, that will affect the way that we live in cities. So how do we design our cities? How do we make sure that our cities are still a nice place to live in hot summers? Is something we really have to take into account. I think the Netherlands has always learned how to get rid of water. Now we have to learn how to keep water for some periods in time. And there's another part of the kingdom in the Caribbean. I was there 2 weeks ago. These islands will be affected by climate change in the upcoming 10 to 15 years, so we really have to move fast over there. But I think TU Delft and some other universities are playing a crucial role in just making sure that we actually implement everything that we know to make sure that the Netherlands is just resilient against this climate change.
Maaike, is there something you can or maybe already do locally?
We do a lot, yeah, sure. But I think these are on different levels. So I think on a national level, we really need, a plan actually, and then to act on a higher scale. Like, hey, how can we keep large parts of the Netherlands still livable in the future? But then on the scale of the city, it's of course indeed keeping the place dry, keeping it kind of nice to live in the summer.
Yeah.
And there we act in multiple ways. So by adding trees or keeping the water longer in the public spaces. So there we are starting. But I think if we the challenge is so big.
Yeah, it needs to be on a national level.
We also really need a different scale.
International level.
Yeah,
Global
and
level.
Global level.
The great thing is that it is not rocket science. Because I think everything we need for these climate adaptive cities is already there. It's here in your village on the campus. So that is one thing that we've been doing over the past year, and that was also a big wake-up call, I think, for a lot of civil servants in The Hague. Okay, if we know that we need more clean energy, let's make sure that we put in the regulation that every new building in this country will have solar panels on the roof. If we know that we can build nature inclusive, and Dutch constructors know what they need to do with more wood, with more green on the outsides of buildings. Let's just put it in the regulation so that every new building in the Netherlands is of this new high standards. And that's something we can start today, actually.
And there I would really like to compliment also you, because I think in this kind of matters, The Hague and you actually really listen to municipalities, and these kind of policies you really don't want to have in your city scale. You really want to have them on national scale.
Because it's frustrating if the city next door is not doing anything at all.
I like your optimism, but I'm a little bit less optimistic myself. You're talking about Delft and the Netherlands. We have the world in our scope, and there we see major problems, migration problems, new diseases popping up. Malaria is now in Germany, and will soon enter the Netherlands again because of the warmer temperatures. So the challenges are enormous, and we have not yet the solutions how to deal with that, to be honest. So we are working on climate change mitigation. We talked about that today, the energy transitions, for instance. Climate change adaptation, that's huge in our university, but also climate engineering. Is there perhaps a knob, or some knobs, that we could and would like to turn to move the climate back to where it was, a little bit?
Like a thermometer.
Or
like a,
Of course, that's risky, and there's a lot of ethical aspects in it and so on, but still we think we should start now working on it. And see if there are methods.
And this is going to be a huge ethical debate, because I think if there are technologies that can help us to get carbon out of the air and store it or reuse it somewhere else, I think that is acceptable. But there are also new technologies that want to block the sun or whatever. That is, I think, a path that we don't want to walk on. But I've asked the new national...
Block the sun and
it's a geoengineering, so just making sure that...
Like clouds.
Yeah, with clouds. With
Clouds
fake
block
clouds
the sun,
blocking
right?
the sun. So that is, I think, something that we really need to ethical
So that's a natural mechanism, but you have to be very careful.
Very careful.
Creating clouds, that's the last thing as a Dutch person I would come up with.
Really? You're welcome tomorrow in the classroom.
Is there any question in the room? Anyone who would love to have a question? Because it's all about you. There. I'll throw that thing towards you.
I'm just wondering, are we, as the Netherlands, satisfied with our effort so far? If you look at the European level, we have a renewable energy share of around 13% at the end of 21. We have 10 ton CO2 emission per capita, and we are about number 24, 25, or 26 in the Euro 27. On those measures. We're talking about acceleration. I mean, in terms of should we have an ambition to leave this? I have to say we're already accelerating since 2019. We were number 27, now we're 26. But what should be the ambition of the Netherlands relative to the other European countries?
That's an excellent question. I think we should be a little bit ashamed of ourselves for being, together with Malta, the least performing country in the EU on climate and energy policies. We are a very wealthy country with all the knowledge in place. We have the big companies to do the investments, and we just need a government that is brave enough to make sure that everyone knows what the ambition is and what is the pathway to that ambition. So I think we can actually deliver to be, by the end of this decade, one of the leading EU countries in terms of decarbonizing our electricity production, thanks to the North Sea and offshore wind. And by 2035, we can really decarbonize our economy and our industry because of everything that is here in this small delta country. We're accelerating, but now we have to keep on, to stay on this track. I think it's something that we need to just deliver as proper grandparents. like the commissioner
Ancestors,
says.
we're all ancestors.
And electricity is the easy part, as you
Yeah.
know. And it's only 16% of our energy consumption.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's a huge start.
One final question. Needs to be a really good one. No pressure. There's a guy behind you. Oh, no, he was first. Sorry.
Too late.
Chaos. Stupid. Sorry.
I was wondering, in terms of the energy transition in the Netherlands, I think there's like two mechanisms, like the market mechanism where you can have small solutions for small flats or like individual houses. The market is working on that, startups with new solutions. And on the other hand, there is also here in Delft, Warmtelink, built by the Gasunie. And my question is, from a technical perspective, I think the big solution is more efficient because you have economies of scale. But also the transition on the smaller scale might help also the social transition. So how do you think those interplay? And yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we need both to reach our goals, and the small-scale solutions are not only about reaching our climate ambitions, it's also about the feeling to be more autonomous, to own your own electricity production or heat production, or do it with a small corporation. I live in a village with 450 inhabitants, and we own one solar park on the rooftop of the school, and everyone feels excited about it. And it was also the way to connect and engage with more people on insulation of homes and everything else that we need to do. But the reality check is, as Tim said, like our economy uses so much energy and so much more than just electricity that if we want to be a climate neutral country in just 20, 25 years' time, we also need the large-scale solutions. We will need the offshore wind, we will need national green hydrogen production, but we also will need a lot of import of molecules and carbon from all over the world to really decarbonize this industry. So I think it's about the right combination of a centralized and a decentralized system, and all it takes is, I think, a government with the balls to guide the way forward, and that is what we are trying to do with the national plan for the energy system that we will publish in 3 weeks' time. So thanks.
Cliffhanger.
No meatballs, but balls.
Yeah.
Give them a warm round of applause, these three, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No.
Dank u wel.